We are on the morning break in the questioning of Helen Steel at the undercover policing inquiry. Helen is being questioned about the deceptive long-term intimate relationship she was deceived into by the undercover police officer John Dines. I am joined with someone who was also spied on by. Were you familiar with John Dines?
I wasn't targeted by Dines. I remember him being around. I had contact with him. I wasn't specifically targeted by him.
Oh, fair play. Anyway, what do you make of what Helen had to say?
Well, Helen's basically been describing the kind of how, comradeship and being fellow activists in a group became friendship, and then, we're getting onto, I guess, the point where the intimate relationship, as they describe it, starts. I mean, I think it's clear. As she's identified, and is really clear from what she describes. I mean, he was being very manipulative, emotionally manipulative. He was specifically playing on her sympathies in order to try and get her, wean her into a relationship, I'd say. She described how he just sort of came into the pub one day, sat down, and out of the blue, falsely, as it turned out, told her that his dad had just died in order to sort of gain sympathy. She described one of the last things she talks about was describing how he'd asked her out, and she said no, and then she felt guilty because he looked so kind of crestfallen or whatever. I think he was definitely sort of trying to, winkle his way into her affections, I think, using kind of, very manipulative tactics.
Yeah, very much. I mean, what's particularly notable about the evidence she's giving is that it's so detailed. She's not only has she got a very good memory for the events, we're also seeing letters, photographs, diary entries, all sorts of material. And we were also seeing photographs from McDonald's security and notes that were taken by McDonald's spies at London Greenpeace meetings, which were released as part of the McLibel trial. There is so much referencing. It's absolutely watertight.
There's a lot of evidence, and I mean, some of it is coincidentally, it's bad, good information, intel coming from bad things that happened. I mean, don't forget. I mean, she's talking about her first meeting with Dines is when she's 22, and then she was sued by McDonald's, and there's a McLibel trial, and then she's gone through the whole process of uncovering Dines and contributed to the whole fact that this inquiry now exists. 22, so I mean, it's nearly 40 years. It's getting on for 40 years since this began.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's notably. I mean, she was 22. He claimed that he was 27. He was actually 32.
That's a pattern of that as well. Andy Coles, I think, is similar. Andy Coles claimed to be about, I can't remember, 24 or something when he was entered into a relationship with Jessica, and in fact, he was 32. So they're basically pretending to be younger than they are, which is in order to target younger women, which is a systematically creepy approach. And I think, I wanted to go back to what you said about that wealth of evidence as well. I mean, part of it is Helen's very systematic. I mean, she kept a diary. She did keep a proper diary all those years. She takes lots and lots of photos. She archives. She's very, very careful. But I think also the process of going through the McLibel trial, they produced a lot of evidence, which, as we've just seen from the letter of, basically a statement from one of the undercover sort of spies that McDonald's sent into London Greenpeace. They collected a lot of evidence, and Helen and Dave managed to force their hand to produce that evidence during the McLibel case. So there's a lot of wealth of evidence that's produced kind of incidentally, which adds to the picture, basically.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, which I didn't actually get time to put onto Twitter whilst it was happening, but I meant to, but just so much information was coming out, was that the notes that were made by the McDonald's spy in London Greenpeace about the group, when that evidence was initially presented, it had blanked out all the information about John Dines.
That had been redacted. It'd be interesting to know when that was done and by who, because there's lots and lots of insistence that Special Branch had no influence. There wasn't, but we know there was lots of contact between the SDS, Special Branch, and McDonald's and private security working for McDonald's, many of whom were ex-police. Some of those ex-police were not themselves Special Branch, but had contact with people like Lambert. So when was that? When was the information? When was the cover story in that specific statement blanked out, redacted? At what point and by who? At whose order?
And of course, this week we've seen in the questioning of Bob Lambert that he was writing in the briefing notes about Helen Steele's tracking down of John Dines, that John Dines was the only person with the in-depth knowledge of the infiltrators who McDonald's had sent into London Greenpeace, suggesting that there's a lot more to that relationship, though, categorically denied by Lambert. I mean, it seems very obvious that there was a symbiotic relationship between those two groups of infiltrators into London Greenpeace.
Information, I think, was clearly flowing both ways, and whether or not they were directly, who was directly aware of Dines' role as undercover, I don't think we know, but clearly there was information flowing from Special Branch to the McDonald's and vice versa.
Sid Nicholson, who was the Vice President of McDonald's UK and head of its security, was every day of the McLibel trial. He was Chief Inspector of Brixton Police Station, whilst Bob Lambert had been serving as an officer there. They certainly knew each other. The idea that there had been no communication just doesn't add up.
Is there not, I can't remember, this is a vague memory, is there not a case also, I don't know if it was Special Branch, but the police let McDonald's security use a police building to surveil London Greenpeace demo or picket or something? I can't remember. I've got a vague memory of that. I'd have to dig that out. You'd have to, probably, if you ask someone from the research group, they'd be able to dig out the reference.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the reference, but it wouldn't surprise me. We heard plenty about the relationships that existed with large corporations and Special Branch at large. The majority of undercover officers just pretend, it's above my pay grade. That would have been something that would have happened at a higher level, through C Squad, something like that. But it's certain there's something there.
Yeah, and following that up is when a lot of those officers retire, as Sid Nicholson did, he went into security for McDonald's. An officer whose name came up this week, Richard Walton, who was involved in the Lawrence inquiry. He was, when the evidence about the spying on the Lawrence inquiry by 1881 came out, Richard Walton resigned in order to prevent action being taken against him. But Richard Walton is now in that world of private security for large corporations. There's an open, a kind of, revolving door between big business, the police, the secret police, and it's all connected together, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no two ways about that. One of the things that really comes out in a lot of the evidence we've been shown this morning is the way in which John Dines wasn't just infiltrating the group London Greenpeace, but also developing friendships, developing a wider sort of social life around it. We saw photos of trips to the beach, which apparently were his idea, that he organized, that he drove people to, going to visit some former activists who had been part of London Greenpeace, were now living in Yorkshire, running an animal sanctuary, and really sort of embedding himself in the lives of all the activists around the scene.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure if this would need some research, but I think he's an early example of that, not just spying on one group in one location. He's a very early example of where the SDS started to go out, travel around the country, they're making links with other activists, so they're establishing a national picture. Yeah. So I can't remember if that many officers had done that before, but that's certainly, later on that's much more developed. You get Boiling, traveling around to different places. You get Mark Kennedy going to different countries. They're drawing an international picture, which is all adding to intelligence, which is a much wider roving brief in a way than they're just targeting one small group.
Yeah, definitely. Also, we're really seeing the way in which John Dines was the next relay runner from from Bob Lambert. That he's targeting the same individuals, he's targeting the same group. He's using that knowledge that Lambert had gained about the group to target the same people. We saw a photo of him earlier on, sat next to Belinda Harvey at a dinner party. Yeah. Let's remember that Bob Lambert and John Dines both claimed to be ignorant of the fact that each other was having sex relationships.
None of them had any idea that any of them had ever slept with anyone. Despite the fact that you can see them at the same table, basically, with those very same women.
Yeah, and this is something which the SDS tried to do across the board. Tried to have that relay effect.
Yeah, it's establish a kind of continuity. It's like a handover process. Yeah.
And John Webb yesterday, who gave evidence, talked about that being that long-term nature of things being a really key part of the tactics of the SDS. We are. It's only a short break. We're only over 50 minutes. We probably should be going back in fairly soon. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, and I mean, I think it's just worth. I think we're probably likely to see more questioning about that manipulation, like deliberate manipulation, and the deliberate. You know, it's partly, you know, attempting to get Helen into a relationship in order to gain deeper intelligence and to broaden his cover, but also it's simple opportunism as well, and that exploiting their position in order, in order to, be able to prey on women sexually. And I think, this is a pattern. It's not just that Bynes did it and he didn't establish it. And the thing about the handover thing is, I mean, Lambert established many of those patterns. He established and institutionalized many of those patterns of covering up abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was really the architect of the modern era of the SDS. All right, thanks for joining us. We'll do another video, hopefully with a couple more guests at lunchtime. Please join us then and tune in if you can. The broadcast is audio only, so annoyingly, the photographs, the various documents are not being shown, but I'm describing them as best I can on my Twitter posts. All right, thanks for following.